All right, let's go ahead and start. So welcome to the December 7th, 2021 Commission on Disability meeting. So Kate will be calling in. Eli Kelsey, I think, is the only one that's not here, if I'm correct. We do have a speaker this morning. First, we just need to approve the minutes for September, October, and November. Is there anybody that has looked at them and saw that there's anything incorrect on them? Okay. Then can we have a motion to pass the minutes for all 3 months?
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from September, October, and November.
And is there somebody that can second that?
I second.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. All right, so is there anybody here for public speak? Not that I see. So I just want to check that. Hi, Marty. All right, so we're going to go straight into our speaker. We have Sarah here from the Disabled Person Protection Commission. Yes, okay. And she's just going to tell us a little bit about what she does and what they have to offer.
Awesome.
Take it away.
Do you mind if I share my screen? Oh, I am not allowed to share my screen. There we go. Let's see. All right, can you all see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Cool. So, like you said, my name is Sarah Neckerman. I'm with the Disabled Persons Protection Commission, or DPPC, and I'll be talking just for maybe 15 minutes about what our agency does and how you can report abuse and neglect of persons with disabilities to the DPPC. So DPPC is an independent state agency. We investigate abuse against adults with disabilities. So that's anyone between the ages of 18 and 59 that has a disability that requires them to have help meeting their daily living needs. And we specifically investigate abuse perpetrated by caregivers. Our website is right down there at the bottom if you ever need to find more information. We're located in Braintree, Massachusetts, but we serve the entire state. So if you're familiar with DCF, Department of Children and Families, we do similar investigatory work, just in a different population. So this graphic kind of shows where we fit in with that. So DCF handles age 0 to 17, whether they have a disability or not, and their phone number is there if you ever need it. We handle ages 18 to 59 when they do have a disability. And age 60 plus goes to the Executive Office of Elder Affairs, or EOEA, again, if they have a disability or not. So their number is there as well. So I want to get into what kind of abuse is reportable to DPPC. And to get us into that, I want to give just a brief scenario. I'm not asking you all to give the answers. You don't have the answers yet because I haven't given you any information yet, but it'll give us a little bit of context. So the scenario is that Brian is a member of the Easthampton Commission on Disability. And his next door neighbor is a man named Arthur, who has an intellectual disability and attends a day program outside of town. Twice recently, Arthur has returned from the day program with injuries, and he's been more withdrawn than usual. And Brian suspects some sort of abuse is happening at the program, but he has no proof. He hasn't seen anyone abuse Arthur, and Arthur hasn't told him anything. And the question is, do these circumstances warrant a report to DPPC? And the answer is yes, because the standard for reporting in Massachusetts is reasonable cause to believe. You do not have to have proof. Okay, you don't have to have evidence. You don't have to have conducted your own investigation. All you need is reasonable cause to believe that abuse is happening. You can also think about this like suspicion. If you suspect that someone is facing abuse, even if you don't know who by or what exactly is going on, give us a call and our investigators will figure it out. Okay, they'll conduct interviews, they'll review evidence and figure out what's going on. So how do you report, how do you determine if you should have reasonable cause, if you should have suspicion? One way is that you might witness abuse happening. Right, that's the most obvious one. If you see Sarah punch Arthur, it's pretty good evidence that Sarah is abusing Arthur, right? But it's not the only way. A lot of abuse happens behind closed doors, right? It doesn't have an audience a lot of the time. So if you wait until you actually see something happening, you might never make that call. So you also want to make the call if someone comes up to you and says, you know, something's happening to me, I'm getting hurt, I'm getting abused, whatever it is. Even if their story doesn't make a lot of sense to you, even if you think they've made things up in the past, at Dppc, we say there is no crying wolf. Even if somebody has made a false report 9 times, we will still investigate the 10th time. People who've made false reports in the past are often more vulnerable to abuse in the future because people see that and don't believe them as much. If you notice an injury on somebody, that might give you suspicion that abuse is happening, especially if it's a severe injury or something that's kind of outside of the norm, hard to get accidentally. Or sometimes you see these big changes in mood or behavior, right? Abuse is really traumatic. It can cause these trauma responses. It can cause these mood and behavior changes. So specifically, what should you report to Dppc? You should report suspicion of physical abuse, suspicion of emotional abuse, suspicion of sexual abuse, suspicion of neglect or an omission. That means this caregiver was supposed to be taking care of someone in some way and they didn't. And as a result, this person faced some sort of injury. Suspicion of financial abuse. This one's a weird one. Dppc isn't technically allowed to investigate financial abuse, but we can send it to other places that can. And you should report deaths when you suspect that abuse played a role. So how to report? This is how you report. This is the most important slide in this presentation. This is our hotline, 1-800-426-9009. Highly recommend writing that down somewhere, putting it in your phone, whatever is going to help you keep track of it. It's a 24/7 hotline, 365 days a year, holidays. You will always get a live person on the other end. I'm going to briefly talk about mandated reporters. So everybody should report, right? But there is a specific group of people that has a legal obligation to report, which are called mandated reporters. So these are people that as a result of their profession, they are more likely to be aware of abuse. So people that have a lot of access to people with disabilities, you know, they work at day programs, group homes, or they have a special type of access like doctors, PCAs, teachers, things like that. So I bring this up because maybe one of you on the call might be a mandated reporter, or you might encounter people in the community who are, that you could kind of send in our direction, let them know we exist, let them know that we offer free trainings for mandated reporters. That's kind of a longer, more in-depth version of this training. So just letting folks know that we exist. The list of mandated reporters is set out under Mass General Law. So that list is here on our next slide. I won't read through the whole thing, but you can skim through it. Those last 2 bullets encompass a lot of the people that I mentioned would be working with people with disabilities on a daily basis, staff of respite centers, residential programs, day programs, group homes, things like that. If somebody is not sure if they are personally a mandated reporter, they can contact me and we will figure it out. Okay, so you know that you need to report suspicion of abuse, or that you should. what does that suspicion look like? So we're going to go over some indicators or red flags that might tell you, something isn't right here. This person might be experiencing abuse. So indicators of physical abuse might include bruising, especially if it's somewhere that's difficult to bruise accidentally. Because, we've all woken up in the morning and be like, oh, where did that bruise on my knee come from? What did I bump? But we don't usually wake up in the morning and go, ooh, where did that black eye come from? Right, that's a little different. Human bite marks, especially if the person doesn't have a history of doing that to themselves, or if it's somewhere that would be difficult for them to reach. Unexplained internal injuries, fractures, sprains, dislocations, burns if they're shaped like an object, especially. So they might be shaped like a cigarette or a lighter or an iron. Injuries to the mouth can be evidence of force feeding, which is physical abuse. And you get these extreme changes in behavior with all sorts of abuse. So if you see that, definitely call it in. It doesn't matter that you know specifically what type of abuse is happening, whether it's physical or emotional or whatever, so long as you suspect that there's some sort of abuse. Next one is emotional abuse. This one can be a little bit harder to pin down, so I want to first give some examples of what it is. So emotional abuse might be screaming, shouting, yelling, or cursing at somebody, threatening violence, making discriminatory or degrading remarks, mimicking them, teasing them in a cruel way, not like a lighthearted banter kind of way, sexual harassment, threatening to take away things they need, like food, shelter, clothing, using demeaning labels, giving the silent treatment, using intimidating gestures. A lot of this I think about as just plain bullying. If you think about like the schoolyard bully, a lot of this stuff overlaps. Now, emotional abuse, a lot of people don't necessarily consider it abuse, including sometimes the perpetrator, which means that you're more likely to actually see it happen as opposed to other types of abuse. But even if you don't see it happen, it can still have these kind of behavioral indicators. So if somebody is being emotionally abused, they might be obsessing a lot, worrying, feeling really anxious, crying a lot. They might have really low self-esteem. A lot of those kind of bullying behaviors go right into somebody's self-esteem. They might have a sudden loss of appetite or weight if they're feeling like too anxious to eat, or they might gain a lot of weight or gain appetite if they're using food as like a coping mechanism. They're likely to show fear of the caregiver. That's true with other types of abuse as well. They might start showing self-injurious behaviors, especially if they weren't showing them before or if they're showing them more now. They might be emotionally withdrawn or angry, lashing out, being distrustful of people in general, right? Deciding, I can't trust this one person, so why should I trust anybody? And difficulty getting out of bed because, that could be a symbol of depression, or difficulty sleeping. Maybe they're feeling too anxious to go to sleep. The next slide is on sexual abuse, so just quick trigger warning on that. Indicators of sexual abuse can look similar to indicators of physical abuse, but just on specific parts of the body. So you might have bleeding in certain areas, bruising to the inner thighs, difficulty walking or sitting, clothing or bedding that is torn or stained, exposure to sexually explicit material if that's not something that was happening before, unexplained gifts from a caregiver. This can look really benign, but can be a sign of something much worse. Bathing or showering a lot, getting UTIs and STDs, and again, these extreme changes in behavior. This is especially something to look out for if you're seeing these indicators more than once, or if you're seeing like multiple combinations of them. It's like if I'm having trouble walking or sitting one day, maybe I slept wrong. But if I'm having trouble walking, every Monday, and also we have some of these other things happening on Mondays, then you might start to ask more questions. Neglect or omission. Here, I want to point out that abuse is not always intentional, right? Sometimes you have caregivers that have good intentions but don't have the training they need, the resources, the support they need, and things end up going wrong and somebody gets neglected or somebody doesn't have their needs met. So I want to point out that we're not always looking for bad people doing bad things. We're looking to protect the victim. So if you have a situation where a caregiver, caused an injury or caused neglect, but they just need more support, more training, DPPC recognizes that and can recommend that the person gets more support, gets more training, that they need to actually be the caregiver that they can be. So if someone is being neglected, they might be dehydrated or malnourished. Their medications might be outdated or unmarked. They might have bed sores, skin rashes, poor hygiene in general. Individual to individual abuse, this is when there is another person with a disability, maybe in a day program or something, that harms the victim. So we wouldn't look into abuse by the person with a disability, because remember, we're focused on caregivers. But if there was a caregiver that was supposed to be watching that person, their care plan said they were supposed to have one-to-one supervision at all times and they weren't, then we would look into that. Maybe the person lacks equipment that they need as well. Then we also have financial abuse. So if the person seems to be missing funds, that they're concerned that they don't have the money that they need, they're being pressured into making certain purchases, and their financial records might have these discrepancies. All of that can indicate financial abuse, and you can report that as well. This is my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me if you want more information, if you want to schedule a training like this for mandated reporters or for non-mandated reporters. You can reach out and we can definitely do that. This is the hotline also, one more time, if you didn't get a chance to write that down. Thanks very much. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to address those.
Thank you. Sarah, does anybody have any questions?
Yes, definitely.
You guys do? Okay.
Yeah. You guys can jump in too, but I definitely have one. Let's see. How would you guys handle someone that isn't officially a caretaker? For instance, a while back, my mother-in-law has TBI, and it was kind of an abusive situation with her older teenage son. And, it's not like he was in a caretaking role, but clearly she was in over her head because of a disability. And, her life has evolved in a way that she was in over her head, related to her disability. She was being mistreated by her older son, and but he wasn't technically in a caretaking role.
Mm-hmm. So definitely, the first thing I would say is it can often be really unclear whether someone is technically a caregiver or not. So if there's any confusion about that at all, I would say still call it in, and we'll look into it and see if they count as a caregiver under our rules or not. If it is very clear to you that the person is not a caregiver, then I would recommend calling the police instead of DPPC.
Yeah,
because they can investigate whether it's, a caregiver or not.
Yeah, okay. Now the second question is how reporting, how the new national registry works, and what gets bumped up to that. And, if for some reason I had to report a coworker or colleague, would they be blacklisted to never work in humans? What does that mean? Like if there's a simple mistake that's reportable, but you don't want them to end up with this permanent red mark. How would you, I'm sure you had to answer that concern before. How would you address that?
Yeah, so to give some context for everybody else, the registry is a new law that was passed recently that says that if there is a care provider who provides services to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, I think it's through the Department of Developmental Services specifically, so there are, it's somewhat limited, that they can get put on this registry that says this person committed abuse against this person with an intellectual developmental disability. And then if they are applying for jobs in that field in the future, their employer has to look at the registry, and if they're on the registry, they're not allowed to offer them the job. So it's basically to prevent people from abusing over here and then just getting a new job and doing it all over again. So to answer your point, there is a piece in the legislation that says if the abuse was kind of a one-time thing, that it was just an accident, that it's not likely to reoccur, and that the person is still fit to provide services and to provide care, then they would not get put on the registry. There's also a couple different appeal processes that someone can go through if they think they shouldn't be on there. So they can appeal to us, and then they can appeal to, it's called DALA. It's a kind of a civil court that they can go through.
So if DPPC's recommendation is this person should be, retrained, and, if you have a recommendation to like retrain or something like that, then it's safe that it's not going to rise to the registry level, or? Typically,
yeah. I'd say if the recommendation is just that they need more training, that's probably something that would not be.
Yeah, so if they didn't get fired for their day program for it, they're probably not on the registry. Is that
the firing is more up to the day program rather than up to us, so it's not necessarily correlated.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So would DPPC ever recommend to fire a staff, or?
So that part, it gets a little more complicated. I know there are some recommendations that we can make and some that we can't.
Yeah.
I would say if you want an answer to that, shoot me an email and I can get in touch with our lawyers and find out the more.
Yeah, I'm just curious. This is about I'm not thinking about a specific situation. But.
Yeah, I mean the programs, I believe, typically look to what our investigators find and whether they say that abuse happened or not when they make their decision about whether to fire the person.
Yeah.
So it's connected in that way, but I'm not sure that we can always just tell someone to fire someone.
Is there ever a type of recommendation like this person, is there any recommendation that nudges towards that, or?
Sorry, I missed that last part. Recommendation that what?
Is there like any kind of recommendation that nudges towards that, like gross, this is gross mistreatment, we have serious concerns about the safety or something like that? Or, I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, the recommendations are about the safety of the victim. So whether that's getting the caregiver more support that they need or whatever it might be.
All right. Yeah, I'm taking up too much time, sorry. Okay, thank you very much.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah. What happens if Trump River staff or big client?
What would happen if a Riverside staff did a claim?
Sorry, I missed the last part of that.
If a Riverside staff did a claim,
That would definitely count as physical abuse. I would say call that into DPPC and we will investigate it.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Are there other questions? No?
If not, I can send this PowerPoint to Angelique and maybe you can send it around to everybody else. And again, feel free to contact me with any other questions.
Yeah, thank you for coming. I really appreciate it.
Definitely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Jamie, could you just say one little quick blurb about switching over to Google?
I don't know anything about that right now. I've
Okay.
heard that we might be doing it in January, but that's all I know.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I have a couple things. I'm just like quick little announcements and then we'll dive into some issues. So I contacted the town about the possibility of the COD going to the new school and doing a little field trip. So they're supposed to get back to me about that. Let's see. The snow ordinance is being discussed tonight at 5 p.m. I have the Zoom link with the safety committee through the city council. So Eli has offered to go, but if anybody else wants to go, they can just contact me and I can send you the link. I can't make it tonight at 5, but yeah, that's a big deal. And they invited us. And so we really want to make sure that at least one of us are there. Let's see what else. Oh, and the other thing is, Eli, we didn't tell them about our field trip to Art in the Orchard, did we?
No, I don't think so.
So we'll just say something real quick, like because they had come and they were a speaker that Kate and Eli and I all went to Art in the Orchard, and I brought my kiddos and we took a little tour on their assistive device. Kate, did you want to say anything?
Sure. Yeah, that was a great experience and a great opportunity to see the effort they put in to make sure that the Art in the Orchard was accessible to folks who might need a wheelchair accessible. It was essentially, I think, a golf cart that was modified for a wheelchair. So it was a great experience to go and meet Eli and Angelique in person. But also the folks at the Orchard were very welcoming. So I'm glad I got to go.
Yeah, and to be clear, it's a multi-passenger vehicle that can take a wheelchair, someone in a wheelchair as one of the passengers.
And it has an automated like description of all the art that we passed. So, and then I lost my keys. Turns out the keys were under my car, but I had to go around like 20 times in the golf cart panicking. It was magical, that part. I was like, no, I'm trapped here overnight. Okay. So we are going to be doing some recruitment. We are allowed to have 13 members, and we're just trying to figure out who's renewing for the new year or not. And so we actually have 4 people here that I believe have put in applications or are in the process of putting applications. So they're just visiting our meeting and listening in. So that's why it's bigger than normal. We have Molly and Marty, Mary, and Stan. And so they are all interested in joining us. Let's see what else. So one of the quick things that I was going to mention, and one of the gentlemen here could maybe speak about for a minute. One of our visitors is I had contacted Easthampton neighbors, and they did in fact say that right now they're not going to be able, or the foreseeable future, offer services to disabled folks that are under 55. So did you want to chime in? Stan, you're on mute still.
There we go.
Because he's on the Easthampton Neighbors, correct?
Yes. So I am one of the original founders of Easthampton Neighbors. And we have had somewhat of a rocky start to our organization and have had to cut back our services significantly. I will be bringing up at the next board meeting of Easthampton Neighbors whether we can seriously think about expanding our service plan to include disabled people regardless of age. I don't know where it's going to come out. We are also part of a statewide organization called Neighbors, and we are bound to follow their guidelines as well. So by the next meeting, I should have a report for you about, what we feel we can and cannot do, and we can move on from that. I am in favor of supporting handicapped as well as seniors.
Angelique, you went on mute.
I'm muted.
I swear I unmuted myself. Did you want to tell us what you told me over the phone about it being out of, did you say Boston, was it?
Well, it was started in Boston and now has expanded throughout the state. There are multiple neighbors groups, Northampton, Hadley, Holyoke, all over the Western Mass area as well as the rest of the state. I don't know what flexibility each group has in terms of setting their
You froze, Stan. No, Stan. Uh-oh. I don't think I can fix that on my end.
All right, well, why don't we
Yes.
continue?
Okay. Well, so the survey subcommittee update would be the next item. And unfortunately, we're not able to have all of us be able to be in a meeting, so we don't have an update for you. Other than right, Eli, like you weren't able to put it in the categories yet, correct?
Not entirely. I'm still working on it.
That's okay. And so I just, when and if we get new members, I think that's going to be really helpful, so we can sit there and figure out what we're going to do with the information and get it out to the public and put it in a way that's going to be useful. Let me see if he's going to come back. So, yeah, I'm sorry, we don't have a huge update for you. The other issue was actually what he brought up. So the Otter note taking, so Kelsey is our secretary, but she is unable to make it for the foreseeable future. She's taking a class at the exact same time. Here it comes, Stan. So I'm not sure what that's going to look like for her, but we definitely need somebody to take minutes. And so she did mention the Otter program, and she tried to send it to me. And I couldn't quite figure it out on my end. But was it Stan that had mentioned Otter as well?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So you can finish what you were saying about the other thing, and then because you froze.
I apologize. For some reason, I didn't notice that my power supply was not working and my computer shut down.
Oh, That's okay. It happens to me all the time at the most crucial moments too. So,
So in any case, I mean, what I plan to do is bring it up at the next Easthampton Neighbors Board meeting, which is, I believe, next week, and see what we can come up with as a consensus among the members and report back to you guys at your next meeting.
so what do you know about the Otter program? Because I had asked Kelsey to like write up a blurb about what it was, and I didn't.
Sure. What I have seen about the Otter program is that it will automatically, it's a free program. There's no cost to use it. It's in the cloud, so you don't need to load any software. And it will listen to your meeting and record everything that is said and then transcribe it into written document that you can then edit into, and add to your minutes if you want to, or distribute as a document along with the minutes.
Go ahead, Jamie.
So we had discussed this previously about a year ago. And I was under the impression that there was something that wasn't good enough for that, like for captioning purposes. It's fine for taking minutes and notes, but Kelsey had some concerns about it being used for closed captioning.
Oh, I only remember the Google part, but okay.
And then we are switching to Google soon, and the Google conferencing does come with a captioning type system, but I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how good it is, and I don't know the ability to download it after the fact to make minutes or whatever, or if it just kind of does live captioning.
Right. All I remember is like a lot of these programs don't do it accurately, and then there's rather large mistakes in there.
Well, I have never used it, so I can't speak to the accuracy. But I did happen to write to them just last week, to ask about closed captioning, because I'm also connected with Easthampton Media, and it would be useful for our city council meetings and stuff like that. And they answered that they do in fact now do closed captioning as part of the package.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, we could sign up for a temporary license and try it out and see how it works. But it was originally going to do full document of everything that is said, but they said it does work in this closed caption.
Okay. Okay, so I'll have to further look into that. Okay, so that's all I have on my list, but yeah, Jeff, go ahead.
Sorry, I had a question first, I think, Stan, about the Easthampton Neighbors Program. And do you think that one of your constraints that you mentioned, you had to shrink your program, is it a financial issue? Or is it?
Financial is definitely part of it. Part of it is also the fact that we do not own any handicapped accessible vehicles. All of the volunteers use their own vehicles to provide service. And a lot of the service requests are related to traveling to doctor's appointments and medical issues and so forth.
Okay.
So if we open it up to handicapped people, we may have difficulty, meeting needs because we don't have anything like the COA van or anything like that.
That's
So
good. And I wonder about the COA too. I think, you guys have probably already done this research, but we have a new director at the Council on Aging, and just.
I'm on the COA board as well.
So you've kind of already vetted that, like what the Commission on Disability is looking at, whether that would be, maybe that's another place where this group could talk to the COA about getting, their vehicle access or staff devoted to people who need to get around. I don't know if that's ever happened, but
Well, no, their vehicle is used for that. As a matter of fact, I used them to go up to Northampton for my original vaccination appointment. But yeah, so they do that. They are cutting back. They have cut back as well to limit the number of people in the van. So they don't have the capacity that they did. And then they were cut down even more recently because one of their vans was in an accident and they had to wait to get, another van from another organization. But yes, they do transportation for seniors, regardless of whether they are handicapped or not. And they do handicap transportation as well because their vans are set up for it.
Yeah, so I think in the future, that would be another sort of dialogue to continue. Is same idea with Easthampton neighbors branching out from just people who are older. Maybe the Council on Aging has in the future has some space for them to provide some services to not just the elder population, but people with disabilities too. That's just something that when Stan was talking about that, I was starting to think about that.
Sure. We have looked into that, and actually Brendan was a member of Easthampton, was one of the founding members of Easthampton Media, and we partnered with them on food delivery issues where some of our volunteers would help their volunteers in terms of food delivery and so on. So we have tried working together with them successfully. Within our guidelines, within their guidelines.
Great, thank you.
Jeff Brown, did you have a question?
Yeah, will the funding for like the COA van and stuff like that, is that allowed to be used on services for non-senior populations?
I don't know. I know that the guidelines of the COA stipulate that seniors over a certain age will get benefits, COA, membership and benefits at no charge, which implies that, younger people who want to use some of their services might be charged for certain services. But I'm not totally clear on that. I haven't been on the COA board very long, and Cindy is the new director, and we don't know, what her guidance will be going forward.
I felt like there was some sort of bureaucratic, no, it's the wrong pot of money thing. And I seem to remember that from a conversation, don't quote anything I said, but I seem to remember that from an off-the-books conversation with Brendan a long time ago.
Eli, go ahead.
Question. Yeah, so my understanding of Easthampton Neighbors is that it's like a matchmaking service, right? That it connects people who want to do stuff with people who want people to do stuff for them. And I don't really understand why that needs to be restricted, why it costs more to allow anyone in the system than to gatekeep and allow only certain people in the system.
It's not a question that it costs more, other than van access and so forth. Question that greatly increases the number of requests that we get. We have staffing to necessarily meet that level of request at this point. We don't have volunteer staffing. So since the primary goal of Neighbors to Neighbors is to support seniors in their quest to age safely at home, adding handicapped people would stress our ability to provide services to everyone.
Go ahead, Kate.
Just to kind of follow up what Eli was saying, Stan, you mentioned you didn't have the staffing availability, but if you haven't previously offered the services to people with disabilities under 55, have you tried recruiting volunteers, or is it possible that there is a volunteer population that's willing and able to help? They just haven't been given the opportunity.
Well, it's a question of finding additional people that are willing and able to help. It's also a question of we don't have any paid staff members. We don't have an executive director. We don't have a paid person to manage an office. You know, Northampton Neighbors is a much bigger group than we are, and they do have paid staff members manning an office. So we have to have volunteers who are fielding all the phone call requests, matching those phone call requests to volunteers, and it's a time-consuming operation. And obviously COVID has made it even more difficult. But I mean, we are trying to expand, we are trying to grow, we are trying to get additional funding, and, you know, I'm going to ask the rest of the board at the next meeting to seriously consider expanding our user population to include, you know, at least a certain portion of handicapped community members. I mean, you know, we do limit all of our members who request services. They have to be able to be self-mobile. You know, we don't try to transport anyone who is not mobile, who is in a wheelchair. We simply don't have, you know, the capacity to do that. So we do provide limits now. Hopefully, if we can expand those limits based on, you know, the ability to get additional volunteers, access to vehicles, etc.
So
But
how do you
but I'm hoping to move in that direction.
Oh, sorry for interrupting. How do you recruit volunteers?
Through our website, and primarily website, Facebook page, etc. And mailings, email, other social media.
Okay.
Is there any other questions on that subject? No. Jeff Bagg, are you able to say if we went on a field trip to the high school, like what are some of the ADA adjustments that you guys put in there?
It's definitely
Not the
not
high school, the middle school, sorry.
The middle school, yeah. I'm not well equipped to
Okay.
go over that. I think, did you say that you had a discussion with someone at the school?
I just asked if because an email came to me saying, oh, it's almost done, like we're ready to open. And I said, oh, could we come to look around? And she said, I'll ask and get back to you. So.
And do you know who you were talking to?
Libby.
Okay, Jean Libby, yeah.
Yeah.
I would stay that course a little bit. One of the best things you could probably do is get the project architect to be walking around with you guys.
Okay.
Or us, whoever.
Yeah.
I know that the site, like the sidewalks and stuff, are not done. So,
okay.
The school interior is done, but the site is not. So there's definitely gonna be a period of time where things are not finished. It's gonna cause issues, I think. But if you could get the architect, his name is Bert. Bert Gardner is probably the best person to talk about this was a requirement and here's how we met it, that kind of stuff. It's definitely not an area of expertise.
Okay. Okay. Are there other things that folks want to talk about? Because if not, I'm just going to have the potential members introduce themselves for a minute. Stan, go ahead.
I would like to also, because of my connection to Easthampton Media, that if you guys have need for any kind of video communication, we can do PSA announcements and broadcast them. We can do longer videos. We can help you create your own productions if you want. Training with members of this commission, training if anyone's interested, and provide equipment to use. Which we provide to anyone who signs up as a member, a community member of Easthampton Media, and there would be no charge for any of this. If you're interested, if anyone here is interested in becoming a member, I would be happy to communicate with them and guide them, on how to do so, and help them out if I could. So I just wanted to put that as well.
You're going in and out a little bit. So you said something about a training, but I couldn't quite hear it.
Yes, all members can get free training by Easthampton Media staff and free access to production equipment and editing equipment to make their production.
Free training, what, I don't understand what the free training is on how to use.
Training on how to use the equipment, how to do video editing, how to do audio editing, stuff like that. Podcasts, all sorts of things related to that.
Great, awesome. Yeah, Jeff, back.
Sorry, I know the audio is a little tricky right now. What Stan was saying about Easthampton Media, I just wanted to go back to the snow ordinance, that changing the ordinance is a long process, and maybe that's where we're at, but then educating people is the next phase. And I just think there's an opportunity this winter with Easthampton Media, for example, to go out and I think the idea of making a public service announcement about sidewalk clearing.
Yeah.
We talked about this last year, like photographs or a video of examples of people who did not clear the walk and what happens. Like we don't want to miss this winter opportunity to show examples of why it's really important. And then I think the idea of a PSA, like if it would be something where if Easthampton Media could really help, not just give people equipment, but kind of go out and once there's snow, I think that would be running really parallel with this idea of the ordinance, because the ordinance is old, it's outdated, but then we need to educate people why it's so important, and they really need to get out there and shovel the walks. And I think we'll have this opportunity in the next couple of months to demonstrate it. And I think the offering, that's what just clicked in my mind, is the offering from Easthampton Media to go out and take a video, try to make a PSA. It's the kind of thing we have all winter. We could kind of get one situated and then work on it over the next period of time. But so that was, when Stan said that, that's what just popped in my mind.
Sounds like a good plan.
What a good idea. That's why we keep you around, Jeff.
I will ask someone at Easthampton Media to reach out directly to you, Jeff. We have a new executive director now. His name is also Jeff. His last name is Mastroianni, and I will ask him to reach out to you and work on plans for development.
I think that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Molly, did you just want to say hi and say who you are, and Marty, real quick?
Sure. Hi, I'm Molly. I saw the recruitment notice on Facebook, and I'm a recently retired of some 40 odd years social worker, so I'm kind of looking to get involved. I worked the last 30 plus years with people with developmental disabilities doing mental health work, so this is a population dear to my heart. I'm a long-term member of the Pascomet Conservation Trust, so I've really enjoyed being part of the community, and this looks like a new way to do that.
Thank you. Go ahead, Marty.
Hi, Ed. I've lived in Easthampton since 1999. I have a master's in regional planning. Like Molly, I've been on the Tascomet Conservation Trust board for 21 years. I've led a couple of major projects for us. I have expertise in creating accessible trails and thought that might be a useful skill for this group. What else? I don't know. I do a lot of things.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Mary Morris, you want to go?
Good morning. My name is Mary Morris. I've recently relocated to Treehouse Community from Holyoke. I have served on the Holyoke Commission on Disabilities as a commissioner for the last 10 years. I recently retired from Mass Rehab and have not also I've been a caregiver to both my parents, and currently I'm a caregiver to my husband. So I know the experience and what people go through. Working on it, my father was disabled for over 30, almost 40 years. And I know what the caregivers go through, but I also realize what different aspects we need, such as when the Holyoke Council on Aging was building their new facility. My mother and I suggested a family bathroom where, like, she had to escort my father into the bathroom to help him. And if you used the men's room or the ladies' room, then you had to have someone stand guard. And so I'm more familiar with things like that. And I am interested in serving on this commission. I think I could bring a lot to it. And I'm also, Angelique, if possible, if you could send me the link for the Zoom meeting at 5 o'clock.
Yes.
On the snow.
Yes.
I'd be very interested in that too, because that is a pet peeve of mine. It always has been. In fact, when we were growing up, my father always taught us before he got sick, you even shoveled out the storm drain so that when things melted, it went down.
Right.
And that's about it.
Thank you.
Thank
Stan, do
you.
you want to say some things? I know we've been talking to you about other stuff, but do you want to introduce yourself?
No, that's okay. I've taken up enough time today. I look forward to becoming an official member of the group, once the city council personnel committee reviews my application.
You did not take up too much time. It's just the right amount of time. We asked you to talk, so.
That's fine. That's fine.
You're very helpful. So does anybody have anything they want to bring up before we close the meeting? Anything pressing? No?
Oh, I just want to say to Mary, if you're going to the Public Safety Committee meeting, I have a letter that we sent to them before that you might want to read. So if you can send me an email, then I can send it back, send you that letter.
I will hook you two up.
Excellent.
Okay, so our next meeting is in the new year, January 4th, I believe. Okay, so is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. No, do it. Do it.
All right.
I'll make a motion.
And then second that emotion. Oh my God. You know what I'm saying. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you guys.
Hope everyone has a nice holiday season.
Yeah.